Make no mistake about it. You can't out-train a bad diet. Back when I used to coach CrossFit classes at my first gym, I'd often overhear members say things like this: I train so that I can go eat cheeseburgers, fries, and get a beer. Now, I'm a firm believer in balance and realistic nutrition plans, but it's also important to have the knowledge of what really works to get lean, build muscle, or lose fat if those things are your goals. Now, while we might not all love the idea of limiting indulgent foods, it's fairly obvious that you can't get a six-pack without focusing on healthy foods. But one area that really seems to trip people up is carbs and sugars, especially as they relate to high-intensity training.
Fettuccine Alfredo. Time to carb load.
What does fueling with carbs really mean? Do you even need carbs? And if so, how many? If you're confused about carbs, sports drinks, energy goo, and consuming sugars around your training, especially when it comes to high intensity, then let's break it down so you can choose the best approach for yourself. Performance training is about building max strength from lifting weights, and it's about max output and intensity in your conditioning. Your strength work is likely going to fall in the 1 to 5 repetition range, or in other words, lifting heavy AF. And you'll hear words like high intensity or HIIT, which stands for high intensity interval training. And in some circles of CrossFit, you'll hear fire breathing when it comes to conditioning. Now, on the other hand, aesthetics training focuses on hypertrophy for maximal muscle growth. And the conditioning burns energy without taking anything away from your ability to lift intensely to build those muscles. So what's the best type of fuel for each style of training, for performance or aesthetics? For performance weightlifting, it's going to demand a lot from your brain and your central nervous system. High intensity interval conditioning also is going to run off of carbohydrates, both for performance and for your ability to recover for the next session. Here's what a performance-based workout might look like. You might start off with cleans. You're going to build up to a heavy set of 3 over the course of 3 to maybe 4 sets. Then you're going to move into your back squat for the day, and you're going to perform 3 to 4 sets of 3 reps at 85 to 90% of your 1 repetition max. Next up, you're going to hit a very tough conditioning piece, which looks like this: 5 rounds for time, 10 barbell thrusters at 115 pounds, and 10 bar facing burpees. And remember, with this particular training approach, it's all about leaving it all out on the floor. Don't reserve a whole lot, follow the percentages, work as heavy as you can where asked to, and on your conditioning piece, really push your pace against the clock. Now for aesthetics. Hypertrophy, or building muscle, usually happens in the 5 to 20 rep range, with a bigger emphasis on quality of contractions, time under tension in the muscle tissue, and of course, effort. The conditioning that you see paired with this is often steady state cardio, or as I've come to prefer from a programming standpoint, something I call functional pump conditioning. Carbohydrates are still an important macronutrient for this style of training, but the demand doesn't have to be nearly as high. You're going to be able to recover well with moderate carbohydrates so long as you prioritize your protein, which is also important for performance training athletes as well. So here's what a sample session of aesthetics training could look like. You might start with back squats, but you're going to implement a tempo where you're going to go down in 3 seconds and up fast for 10 to 12 reps. You'll rest 2 minutes, you'll hit that for 3 sets, making your last 1 to 2 sets high effort. Then you'll move into a superset of lower body work. That superset is going to involve dumbbell reverse lunges and 45-degree back extensions. We're going to implement tempo on this to draw out the time under tension on the muscle tissues. We're gonna shorten rest periods to 60-second breaks between each exercise as you move back and forth. And we're gonna hit that for 3 sets as well. And then finally, your conditioning piece. This functional pump conditioning looks as follows. You've got 20 minutes on the clock, and you're gonna move at a continuous, moderate pace. You're gonna start on a stationary bike for about 1,000 meters. You're gonna get off and you're gonna perform 10 hanging knee tucks with controlled lowering of your legs. So a little bit of tempo here, more time under tension. Then you're gonna move into side plank hip taps, 10 per side. So this is cardio mixed with direct core abdominal work. I learned a lot about this difference in training and fueling firsthand from my transition into and back out of competitive CrossFit. Over my 7 years competing in the sport, I slowly increased my carbohydrate intake, and year after year, I saw my performance and recovery improve. See, I was an aesthetics-based training athlete before I got into CrossFit, and so I had a different mentality when it came to nutrition. Minimize my body fat at all costs. And I realized that when I moved into competitive fitness, that mindset had to change in order to optimize my performance in the competitive landscape of CrossFit. See, in my first years, I was afraid of sugar and carbs because I didn't want to gain body fat. But in the later years, I embraced them. Carbs specifically helped my recovery times improve and my performance skyrocket. Towards the end of my career, I was consuming daily around 500, sometimes 600 grams of carbohydrates. And most of the other athletes in the sport were doing the same. In fact, as we got closer to competition season, that number could climb as high as 800 a day. I was taking liquid sugar drinks, supplements, eating foods like ice cream at night for added sugars and calories, all in the name of recovery. So what was going on for my old clients back at the CrossFit gym when they came in and they started to apply some performance training methods? Well, they were starting their fitness journey into performance style training with the hopes that they were going to change their bodies and look and feel the way they had dreamt of for years. But the workouts that we were giving them were proving to be very carbohydrate demanding. They were getting depleted, and without good nutrition principles in place, they were reaching for low quality, high sugar options. High intensity conditioning and performance lifting can both help build incredible physiques. Don't get me wrong, but they are going to challenge those who don't already have a solid foundation in nutrition and good habits in place around their food. See, if you hit performance style workouts and then you don't have a high quality meal with protein and complex carbs handy, you are going to end up feeling starved and reach for anything that you can. And what that usually means is calorie dense processed foods that lack any sort of quality. Lastly, it is important to remember that just because a workout is high intensity doesn't mean it burned a lot of calories. For the best body composition, we always have to account for calories first and foremost and get in sufficient protein. That's how you build a great aesthetic. High intensity and performance-based training feels like it demands more calories because of the sheer effort that is given. But the actual caloric burn increase might end up being a total wash. See, people who do high intensity training often end up moving less the rest of the day, which ends up balancing out calories. And when compared to someone who does aesthetics-based lifting and does just more movement and steady state cardio throughout the rest of their day, that person's energy output might be the same or even higher than the performance group. So if you want to build a proper nutritional strategy for either approach to training, this is how you start. Number 1, get your protein intake correct. We're going to aim for 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Number 2, fix your calories. Understand what your needs are to reach your goals. Have a way of tracking it and make sure that you're hitting it on a consistent basis so that you can see the results you want. Then the third thing is adjusting carbohydrates based upon the training style. You got protein figured out, you've sorted out your calories. Now, if you're going performance-based, uptick the carbohydrates so that you see improvements to your training and you're performing at a high level in your workouts. Now I'm going to provide you with some examples, and we're going to use this client who's a male, 185 pounds, 5'8", 30 years old with 18% body fat as our case study. This client's goal is to lose body fat and maintain or gain muscle in the process if they can. Their activity level is moderate. That means that they're training 5 days a week for about 60 minutes each session, and they move some outside the gym, not a lot. To match this person's goal, we're gonna put them into a 10 to 20% calorie restriction. This is gonna be the sweet spot for losing some body fat, making sure that they're maintaining muscle as they're doing it, and if they're a relatively untrained individual, they might even be able to see some muscle increase along the way. We're gonna tell them to get at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And what you'll see is that if they want to approach a performance style program, I'm gonna put them on slightly higher carbohydrates, which is about 40 to 50% of their total energy intake. Whereas if they're gonna go with the aesthetics style program, then we can get them on a moderate carb approach, which is more around 30% of their total daily intake. And then the question is, what do we do about the fat grams? How much fat are they supposed to take in? Well, that just comes out to whatever calories they have left after protein and carbohydrates have been selected, and we know what their calorie goal is for the day. We fill the rest in with fat grams. So for this client example, regardless of whether they're going performance or aesthetics approach, their targets are gonna look like this. At maintenance, this person is burning about 2,800 to 2,900 calories. So their target in a 10% deficit is 2,500 to 2,600 calories. If we're putting them on moderate carbohydrates, that means they're gonna be having 185 grams of protein a day, 194 grams of carbs per day, and 119 grams of fat per day. If they're going performance and we're gonna put them on a high carb approach, protein stays the same at 185 grams, carbs go up to 291 grams, and the fat lowers down to 76 grams per day. All right, let's start looking at how we're gonna spread this over 4 meals in the high carb approach. With meal number 1, we're gonna make a bowl of oatmeal and we're gonna mix in some raw milk with that. Then on the side, we're gonna have a couple cups of Greek yogurt for the protein. Next up is meal 2. This might be the post-workout meal or something that's eaten right around training. You can see that there are 2 bottles of red Gatorade in there. That's gonna get some simple sugars in there to help support the training and recover from training. For the whole foods, we're gonna see a mixture of zucchini and tomatoes for vegetable. Then there's gonna be some ground beef and some avocado. And for meal number 3, for simplicity's sake, we're gonna keep with some of the same ingredients. We've got grass-fed ground beef again with some chopped tomatoes. And then we're gonna have some gold potatoes that are in there. This is gonna be a heavy starch amount for that performance-based training to increase the amount of total carbs with a little bit of fat from avocado. And then to make sure that we're rounding out our protein needs for the day, there's gonna be 1 additional meal. This is a small meal, some would call it a snack. And this is gonna be some egg whites cooked in a pan and a little bit of salsa on the side and some carrots for some added vegetable. Now let's take a look at some of the differences that you might see in the moderate carb approach. You'll probably see less overall starch content. You won't see the Gatorades and the simple sugars for training, but you're gonna see a similar amount of protein and focus on quality ingredients. We can start off with looking at breakfast, which is gonna be eggs, a side of mango, and a glass of milk. Next up for meal 2, you're gonna see some similarities here to what the performance athlete was eating. We got chopped tomatoes and zucchini, along with grass-fed ground beef, a little bit of avocado, and this time a banana on the side. And for meal 3, again, keeping things simple and consistent, the same veg, the same ground beef, and avocado. You'll notice that there isn't the side of potatoes at this meal, just like the last meal didn't have that added Gatorade for fueling after training. And to round out that last meal of the day for this aesthetics approach or the moderate carb approach, we've got a little bit of fruit in there. We've got apple, we've got plum. That's gonna get us some of our carbohydrates. We also have non-fat Greek yogurt. This is gonna get us a big dose of protein without the added fats and a little bit of almonds or a handful of almonds on the side. I hope seeing those meal examples help put something concrete in your mind as to what it can look like to approach this in 2 different ways. Remember, we kept calories the same, we kept protein the same, and all we did was adjust for where we were getting our macronutrients from. Ultimately, if you have good sound nutrition practices in place, you can be successful in either type of training approach. But if you want to optimize for performance training, then make sure you're getting carbs, sugars from good sources at the right times so that you can feel best in your training and not end up craving sugars in the evening and at night. And if you want to see your own numbers, then click the link in the description below and try my free macro calculator, where you can set your preferences for carbs, protein, and fats, just the way I outlined for this client example. But remember, these numbers are just a ballpark. So take it into your own training, keep an eye on things for a few weeks, see what feels best for you, and then make some adjustments. And as always, if you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to interact with you on this topic and help you get on a way to a better nutrition plan for your training approach. See you next time.